Oda has broken One Piece again as Jewelry Bonney has just become a second sun god Nika. And this really mind-blowing twist that no one saw coming could very well be the key to saving the One Piece world, or on the other hand, this turn of events could have disastrous consequences for the story as well. But honestly, that's not even the craziest part, because I'm now really wondering here if Bonney can just transform into any power she can believe herself to be. Seriously, could we see Darkness Bonney? How about Earthquakes Bonney? Could she have a pizza power if she truly believed in it? And with this seemingly godlike ability, even more broken than Luffy's, we once again have to discuss if Bonney will actually join the crew. Everything starts with the very mysterious nature of Bonney's devil fruit, and in case you've forgotten, because I have, the origin of Bonney's devil fruit powers is actually pretty much unlike any that we've seen in the entire story. In a way, it's way darker and more twisted than you probably remember it to be, because in chapter 1103, right after the Kuma flashback, Saint Saturn is about to crush Bonney. And it's in this scene that we also learn that Bonney's mom Ginny was taken to Maurizio to be someone's 8th wife? Gosh, so now we don't know whose 8th wife she was actually supposed to be. She might have just been Saturn's wife or some other world nobles, but eventually Ginny ended up being experimented on by Saint Saturn, which resulted in the very deadly Sapphire Scale Disease. But what you also may have forgotten is that Saturn also experimented on Bonney by infusing her with an extract of some sort of devil fruit power. And honestly, with everything else going on in this really insane stretch of lore drops and chapters, it was kind of easy to just read this, think it was kind of interesting, and then not think about it ever again. But beyond the mind-blowing scientific implications of this process, let's break down why the government chose to inject baby Bonney with this particular fruit in the first place. Because just from this information alone, it basically means that the government at some point possessed Bonney's actual devil fruit, and by infusing Bonney with its powers, it is clear that they were trying to somehow mass produce the abilities that this fruit usually gives to its users. Now, luckily the government was not able to mass produce whatever this power is like they wished to, because we were actually told that once Bonney was infused with the essence of the fruit, it was basically the same as if someone had taken a bite out of the fruit and no one else could eat it and actually thus gain its power. But clearly though, this fruit was very, very important to the government, and they knew exactly what kind of powers it would give its user. Once again, we do know this because Saturn is the one who actually told us how the true powers of the fruit worked in the first place. Because in that very same chapter, 1103, he tells us that the fruit can transform its user into a state that matches any future perceived by them to be possible. But that also means that the possibilities become more limited as the user's future becomes more and more certain. And so, of course, if Saturn knows how the fruit works, then he must have known a previous user of that fruit and seen its full potential. So then we of course have to ask ourselves, who was this previous mysterious user of Bonney's fruit? Was it just some other test subject? I kind of doubt it, since a test subject most likely wouldn't have unlocked the full potential of such a fruit. So who then could it have been? Well, based on everything else we have seen in recent chapters, my guess is that someone from the Void Century actually once possessed these exact same powers and used them to help change the world. I mean, just think about it. If this power lets the user transform into any future they believe possible, then that could have some pretty dangerous consequences. But of course, the most dangerous scenario comes if we take the awakened form of this fruit. Now, just to remind you, awakened Paramecia devil fruits usually allow the user to utilize their own powers on the environment around them. Take Doflamingo, for example, where his awakening allowed him to turn his entire environment into string. So this isn't just pure speculation at all, but if this power works the same way as we think it might, then can you even imagine if the user, say, believed in a future where they were the strongest fighter in the world? Or worst of all, what if they imagined a world where suddenly everything had gotten flooded? Like, do you see what I'm getting at? And of course, the world government would want full access to this crazy type of ability. Now, keep in mind here for a second that of course we don't know yet the true limits of this fruit, and there probably are gonna be some, but if an awakened user of this fruit believed a catastrophic future was possible, then who's to say it wouldn't become reality? I mean, surely no one ever thought that Bonney would become a full-on legit second sun god Nika before this chapter, so it really seems like anything is possible with this at this point. However, things of course aren't quite so simple. Of course, the user has to actually truly believe in the things that they are transforming into, which is a pretty serious drawback, as we've already seen, because when Bonney loses her belief, then her transformations become pretty weak, just like when she attacked Saturn right here. On the other hand though, when she is full of belief, it does seem like pretty much anything is possible if she's even able to imitate Luffy's godly Nika powers, which we'll need to see exactly how much of his powers she can actually use, but if it is even anything close to Luffy's power, then this ability is just beyond broken, like it's probably the most powerful devil fruit in One Piece if this is actually what it can do. Because if she can even become something like Nika, then who's to say she couldn't transform into literally anything? I mean, with enough belief, she could become Darkness Bonney and use Blackbeard's absurdly powerful darkness abilities. Or what if Bonney imagines a future where she is a lightning god and can rain down lightning bolts just like Enno? Like, seriously, there does need to be some sort of limitation here, and I'm really dying to know the actual limits of this power, because if it is really only restricted by her own belief system, then this seriously is just the most powerful devil fruit in all of One Piece, period. And I do know that this turn of events is highly controversial in the fan base right now, and many readers think this is something that Oda just made up out of nowhere, but beyond that, I just can't get over how truly insane Bonney's powers actually are. I mean, we know just how supremely powerful Luffy is using his Nika powers and enhancing his fighting with his imagination, but Bonney kind of takes that creativity to a whole different level. Again, this is all assuming that she has the proper belief to do these things, but if she does, she could shift through multiple devil fruit powers in a single fight, plus she could even transform into basically many different species that she knows do exist. Or I guess technically even don't exist. I mean, imagine Giant Bonney, Fishman Bonney, or even Lunarian Bonney. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but it's just kind of cool and exciting to think about the possibilities with this fruit. But of course, her fighting possibilities are not even the most mind-bending part of her powers, because if we look back to chapter 1069, which honestly, first of all, nice, but also feels like an eternity ago, Vegapunk explained his theory about how devil fruits first came into existence in this world. Basically, his idea is that devil fruits were the evolution of human thoughts and desires. So essentially, people in the past wanted something so badly to have a certain ability that this ability was somehow actually created kind of in a different parallel dimension. At least that's what Vegapunk believes, though he does state clearly it's just his theory. And we previously thought that devil fruits might have been created scientifically or through a devil fruit tree, which both is probably still possible, but now seeing just how wild Bonney's powers can get, I'm kind of starting to think that devil fruits might actually be a product of Bonney's awakened abilities. I mean, think about it, because up to this point, we've seen Bonney transform herself into what she believes on top of her ability to change people's ages. But what if by awakening her own fruit, she could also transform other things into what she or they believe? Like, what if some kid came up and truly believed that they could turn into a fire human? Well, with Bonney's abilities, maybe she could transform him into exactly that, and boom, we have the very first fire devil fruit user. Like, you get my drift? It's kind of out there, but at the same time, maybe not. And so if all of this were actually true, we might as well start calling this devil fruit the OG no Mi, or the true god devil fruit, because seriously, it might very well be the original devil fruit or ability that created all other devil fruits. And now I'm just imagining a previous user of this fruit or ability just sitting on a throne and granting desires and wishes to a long line of people waiting. And if that's true, please sign me up for a card-based ability, because that would be absolutely fantastic. And also that's a little bit of foreshadowing for later. Now, of course, we could be getting way ahead of ourselves here. The power obviously does rely on Bonney's personal beliefs and the strength of her hopes and dreams. So if she is kidnapped once again, or if she somehow loses her own faith, we may just never actually get to see her full potential. But again, like seeing Luffy and Bonney in that final panel of chapter 1118 has got me feeling so excited for the possibility of the future of the story overall, I guess. And even if Bonney can use her fruit in a variety of creative ways, there is no saying how strong she will actually be in these forms. For example, even though she has now turned into what seems to be a true version of Nika, that of course doesn't just mean that she will automatically be just as powerful as Luffy. Although the Gorosei did seem to sense a weird presence in this chapter, which I have to imagine is Bonney, since they have already sensed Luffy as Nika multiple times throughout this arc. And so there is definitely potential for this transformation to be real, even if she doesn't quite have the same amount of power as Luffy does. At least that's, I guess, what we would all assume at this point. And okay, but I'm having kind of this funny thought now, because if Bonney is a real Nika and she can transform other people as we've speculated, can you just imagine her, say, turning the entire Straw Hat crew into Nikas? Oda, please give me Nika Frankie, give me Nika Usopp. Like, all of that would just be beyond hilarious. Either way though, all of this does make me seriously question why the Gorosei in the world just threw Bonney out in the first place. Because remember, Bonney and her mother were experimented on by Saint Saturn before they were then just kind of thrown out of the Holy Land after they developed the Sapphire Scale disease. And that detail really makes me wonder if they actually knew fully that Bonney gained her devil fruit powers in the first place. I mean, she didn't manifest them until she was a little bit older, so maybe they thought she never obtained the abilities in the first place, kind of like a failed experiment. I mean, that's personally the only reason I can ever imagine why she was thrown out, because clearly, I mean, even if it's 100% real or not, this power is insanely important and powerful and would be great for the government to have as well. It has even been a reoccurring theme that Bonney has escaped from the government and they want her back, such as when she finally escaped these secret agents and when she was captured by the Marines back during the time skip, or I guess it was Blackbeard. So clearly they want her and her powers for some reason now. Who knows, maybe previous users of her fruit have made the Gorosei and Imu stay young, or maybe the opposite is true and Bonney's powers are actually the key to defeating all of them. I mean, if Bonney used her powers to make the Gorosei really old, or really like babies, I guess, maybe they would just turn into dust, since they are most likely hundreds of years old, which is basically guaranteed now that they recognize the ancient giant which climbed the Red Line 200 years ago, and it seems that they were around at that point. And again, that possibility just kind of scratches the surface of the massive questions still surrounding Bonney's future role in the story as well, because with the reveal that Bonney can become a second version of Nika, we now have some incredible possibilities that we have never considered before. Just think about this. We've thought for a very long time that Nika's powers are somehow key to using whatever Joy Boy left as the One Piece treasure. Now we can speculate this because in chapter 1054, Shanks said it was finally time to claim the One Piece, and he says this only, and I kind of insist on this point, only after Luffy awakened his Nika form during the climactic rooftop battle against Kaido. Wow, Roof Piece feels really long ago. And of course, if Nika is somehow the key to using whatever the One Piece is, then we could obviously conclude that Luffy himself would need to be present on the island on Laugh Tale in order to unlock the secrets of the One Piece or use whatever is hidden there. At least that's what we all thought, but now I guess if Bonney can also become Nika, then that means there are also many more possibilities now for who can actually find and use the One Piece. Because theoretically, Luffy could even die now and Bonney could just continue as Nika and play that role to save the world if necessary. And I'm not saying I think that's what's gonna happen or that Bonney would still believe in Nika if Luffy died, but after chapter 1118, this possibility theoretically now exists in the story. Now, of course, we will have to see if Bonney's heartbeat has also become the drums of liberation, just like Luffy, because that does seem to be the key somewhat to awakening ancient technology like the ancient robot. So if Bonney can duplicate the drums of liberation, then basically all of these possibilities most likely go out the window. And of course, Oda was pretty sly about revealing this in the chapter. Bonney only became Nika after Luffy did, which means that we can't really tell if the drums of liberation that the robot is hearing were just coming from Luffy or from both of them. I mean, the ancient robot only sensed Joy Boy after Luffy had entered his Nika form, so no telling if he could sense Bonney here or not. Then again, the Gorosei did seem to sense a weird new presence, so I am all on board with the idea that Bonney is just doing something that the Gorosei sense to be a major threat. And so now, even though we don't know, just for fun, let's do say that Bonney can become a legit Nika now with all of the same godlike powers as Luffy. What in the world is Oda going to do with her next? Well, there are of course a few interesting possibilities here that we simply must discuss. And one of those is Bonney being captured by the world government. Yay! Reoccurring theme. Since this has been kind of a reoccurring subplot of Bonney's entire story, I simply can't imagine that the government won't at least try to capture her again. And honestly, I could even see Bonney try to sacrifice herself here at the end of Egghead so that the rest of her allies and Kuma's body can successfully escape. Because I mean, seriously, even the giants were having some serious trouble just holding off one of the Gorosei in this chapter, and now it seems like all of them are headed back to investigate the strange presence that they felt with Bonney entering her Nika form. So even though the ships have set sail, the threat is still far from over. Which also means that I could see Bonney making a massive sacrifice to let her friends escape as well. However, the world government isn't the only one who might want to capture Bonney, because not only might she be able to help unlock the secrets of the One Piece, but there's also a very real possibility that she could also use her powers to potentially read the poneglyphs. I mean, it would basically be as simple as her imagining a future where she has learned to read them, and bam! We have another character who can potentially read these ancient texts and figure out where Laugh Tale is located. Again, that means that someone like Blackbeard, Buggy, the Crocodile, Shanks even might be interested in capturing her because he's already kidnapped someone with the potential to read the poneglyphs with the three-eyed Charlotte pudding. And then of course there is also very much still the possibility of Bonney just straight up joining the Straw Hat crew, and man, I personally would absolutely love to see all the wacky tag team shenanigans that a Nika Luffy and Nika Bonney would be able to pull off if they were in the same crew. I mean, it would be insane. I mean, I know some people might feel different about that, but I personally kind of dig it. And Bonney would of course instantly be one of the most versatile and powerful characters on the crew if she can just transform herself into a number of different things. Plus, just imagine all the crazy things she could do to transform the rest of the crew with her age powers. Like, could we see an adult form of Chopper or even a younger Brook? How about Old Man Luffy? And how strong would middle-aged or peak-aged Zoro and Sanji be? Seriously, the possibilities are pretty much endless and very, very insane. But there's also always the chance that Oda doesn't do much with Bonney at all after this arc. As sad as it is, characters that play a massive major role in one arc often end up being shoved to the side for future arcs, so it would also not be massively surprising if Bonney just kind of goes off with Kuma, trying to find a way to bring back her father. Now, one thing that is sure to play a big role though is the future of the remaining Vegapunks. In fact, it was even a massive point in this chapter that the Gorosei want to hunt down the remaining ones, Lilith and Atlas, so that the only remaining Vegapunk is York, plus I guess technically Punk Records, which is the giant brain floating in the tank. And in this chapter, it was basically confirmed that the brain will continue to live on and grow even after the Stella Vegapunk has been killed, which honestly brings up some pretty interesting questions. For example, was the Stella Vegapunk even the real one in the first place? For example, I haven't forgotten the hologram projections that were introduced earlier in this arc, so maybe the Stella was just a projection, or maybe not, and that was just his real flesh and blood. But I do wonder what the Punk Records brain will do after this. Does it have a will of its own? And if so, how will it react to being used by the Gorosei for their evil purposes if that's what they manage to do? I mean, I could very easily imagine it rebelling or locking York out so that it can't be used to fuel the world government's twisted goals. And don't forget about the self-destruct mechanism that is pretty much always present in any Vegapunk lab, so this whole island could still very easily be destroyed at the end of this arc. And while that's one mystery that we could probably very easily see resolved in the next couple of weeks, there are a few of the most insane mysteries in One Piece that have gone unanswered now for literally hundreds of chapters. We're talking about mysteries like Blackbeard's multiple devil fruits, how's that possible? The true nature of the One Piece, and even this massive mysterious egg that has literally never even been mentioned once. And so if you want to know all the secrets of the biggest mysteries left in One Piece and some very good potential answers, you can watch that video right here. As always, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in this next one.